Hey class, welcome back. We're going to be going over lesson 4 today, which is credit cards and paying back our credit card loans. By the end of this lesson, you'll know the characteristics of various credit cards, you'll know how to pay back a credit card loan, and you'll be able to determine the amount of interest you're paying. We're going to be talking about minimum payments, as well as we're going to quickly discover and talk about a monthly payment calendar that's available to you through the government of Canada. So, let's start off with what credit cards are. Credit cards just allow a person to buy an item without paying for them immediately. A credit card is considered a way of borrowing money for a short period of time, and most credit cards charge a higher than usual interest rate. Normally, when you first apply for a credit card, they're student credit cards and they charge you about 19% or to 20%. Some stores have their own credit cards. It can be used to purchase stuff in their own stores. Some credit cards have reward points. Across Canada, there's 3 major credit card suppliers. The 3 major companies are Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. Credit cards often come with conditions, and applicants often can choose credit cards that best suit their needs. But we also need to take into consideration that credit cards are usually granted to you based on your credit score. So that's why most credit cards that are granted to you at the beginning have higher interest rates, because you have no credit. You use credit cards to build up your credit, and the more credit you build up, the higher your maximum limit ends up being, and the lower your interest rate can be, and the more perks they kind of come with. So let's look at the conditions of this one. So here we have our CIBC Adventure Gold card, right? Let's look at what we can figure out just from the ad. So it says that what's the annual fee on the card? If we go look here, it says the annual fee is $120, right? So our annual fee here is $120, and you can see that on the card, right? When it means by minimum credit limit, that's the smallest credit limit that they can give you. So the smallest amount that you can borrow, and depending on how your credit score is, you might be able to get a higher credit limit. Amount you can borrow. That just means that you can borrow up to $5,000 at least. The annual interest rate on this card is 19.5%, right? And there's like a bunch of reasons you might have multiple cards. You might have multiple cards to increase your credit limit. It helps you increase your credit. You might use different credit cards for different reasons. So you might have a cashback MasterCard, and then you might have a travel card. You might have a business credit card. So there can be a variety of reasons why you might have different credit cards. Note that the annual interest rate is always divided by 12 because credit cards are compounded monthly, right? So that's something that we just want to remember. When you take out a loan or make a payment using your credit card, the interest on that credit card begins to gather on the day that your statement ends. So more often than not, you have like a 30-day grace period, right? Each month, and then your credit starts to gather after that. So say I bought something, my billing cycle, it's kind of like having a phone, right? My billing cycle starts on May 1st. From May 1st to June 1st, anything I buy within that time, up until June 1st, it's like a 30-day grace period, right? And then after June 1st, my interest will start to gather. In this section, we're going to be discussing something called monthly minimum payments, how your interest is accrued, as well as how you actually pay back your loan. So monthly minimum payments, every credit card company has a monthly minimum payment that is set up for you and your credit card balance. When you get your statement at the end of the month, they tell you what your minimum payment is. So when you look at your bank card statement and you look at your credit card score, it tells you, okay, you spent this much, this is how much you borrowed, this is how much interest it'll charge you, and then it'll tell you, you need to make this much money. You need to pay this much money to us. You need to make your minimum monthly payments because if you don't make them, they actually start to negatively impact your credit score. The way that the minimum monthly payments are set up, it's to make sure that you cover your interest amount and some principal as well. So minimum payments are kind of set up as a way for you to pay off your credit card loan eventually. Otherwise, it can balloon into something that is impossible to pay off. Failure to make the minimum amount will negatively impact your credit score and thus make it more difficult to borrow in the future. So let's calculate the minimum credit card loan for $500 by the end of the month. So like we said, the minimum amount that you need to pay is 3% of your total owing. So our total owing is $500. So our minimum payment is going to equal 500. And then if we want to find 3% of that, we're just going to multiply by 0.03. And in that situation, we're going to get 15 bucks, right? So our minimum payment in this situation is going to be $15. Okay? Credit cards are always compounded monthly, right? So they're always used, you always calculate them using the compounding interest equation that we used. They're always compounded monthly, so your interest is added at the end of the month. And the interest rate is the annual APR, right? That's how much you pay annually. And remember that when we're calculating compound interest, what you need to do is you actually need to divide that by 12. And then your end value is just going to be the number of years, and make sure it's always number of years. So if you had something that you needed to pay off and you paid it off 6 months later, you need to do 6 divided by 12 to get the number of years, and then multiply that by 12 as well to get your end value. So I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but we're going to do a few questions together and it starts to make a little bit of more sense. Okay? So before we get started, there's a few things you need to do in order to find out how much interest you're going to pay on your credit card loan, right? So the first step you're going to do is you're going to find your end value. Your end value is going to be compounding periods per year. You can use your chart from lesson 2 as well, but our compounding periods per year is always going to be 2 times number of years, or 12, times number of years. Credit cards are always 12 per year. They're always compounded monthly, right? Your I value is going to be APR in decimals, and you're going to divide that by your compounding periods per year, which is also going to be 12, right? Then you're going to plug all your numbers into the compounding interest formula, which is A equals P, 1 plus I to the power of N, and find the value of A, right? After you find A, if I ask you how much interest did you pay, you can actually go back and be like, okay, interest is equal to how much I paid in total, the amount minus the principal, and you can find out how much you paid in just interest. So let's do that with this question, right? So Annie uses her CIBC credit card to pay for a new TV that costs $600. So that is how much money she's borrowing. So our principal right off the bat, let's write it down, is going to be 600 bucks, right? The annual price rate is 20%, and it's compounded monthly. How much would she owe after 6 months if she never made a minimum payment? So she never paid anything off. So let's just follow our steps, right? First, let's find out what N is. N is equal to the number of compounding periods, which we know is, I'm just going to write this in. So the number of years multiplied by the number of compounding periods, right? And we said that was always 12. So we're going to write 12. Let's start off with 6 months, right? 6 months is equal to 6 divided by, there's 12 months in a year, so it's actually 0.5 years. So N is going to equal 0.5 times 12, right? And that's going to be 6. So our N value is just 6, right? Next, we're going to find our I value. Our I value is just the APR divided by 12, right? So let's go in and say, okay, what's my APR? My APR is 20%, so it's just 0.2 divided by 12, which is going to be roughly 0.016. So that's how much it's going to be compounded every month, right? Then let's go and put all of this into step 3, which is our A equals P, 1 plus I to the power of N formula. And let's just go fill in what we know. We know P is 600, right? We know 1 plus I is going to be 0.016, all to the power of N, which is 6, is going to equal A. A is equal to 600 times 1.016 to the power of 6, right? So then I'm going to do this 1.016 to the power of 6. 0.16 to the power of 6 is going to give me 1.016 to the power of 6 is going to give me 1.0999, so I'm just going to leave it as 1.1. 1.10, right? And then let's multiply that by 600. I always like to just do a answer times 100 or times the 600. So I got 659.95. And that's my answer. So after 6 months, she's going to owe $659.95. Right? That's how much she's going to pay if she didn't make any payments. Therefore, Annie will pay $662.55. Okay. So now, moving on. I'm going to have you pause here and try to do this one on your own. And then we will go from there. Oops, this should say PS5, not PS4. So PS5, when it came out. So just so you know, the price of a PS5 is about $499. So PS5 cost is about $499. Usually I make people go look it up, but for our purposes, I won't make us do that. Okay. So Eli wants to buy a PS5 when it came out. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough cash up front, so he decided that he was going to buy it on his new RBC credit card. The APR on his credit card is again 19.99% and is compounded monthly. How much should Eli pay if he never makes a monthly payment after 80 days? And he pays after 80 days, and how much of that money is interest? Right? So first things first, we're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, step one, we're going to find what N is. We know N is the number of years times 12, right? So let's find out our number of years. So we have, he pays after 80 days. So we're going to have to find 80 days in years, which we can do by dividing by 365 times 12. So 80 divided by 365 is going to be 0.219178082. I'm just going to go ahead and multiply that by 12 right off the bat from my calculator. So I'm going to get 2.63. And I'm going to leave it at, and I'll do 4 decimal places. So I have 2.6301 is my N value. Let's go in, and the second thing we're going to do, step 2, is always find your I value. And our I value is just the annual interest rate, which is 0.19999, right? And that's always divided by 12 because it's compounded monthly. So it's going to be 0.017, right? So we got that. Now we're just going to go back in and plug this into our A equals P 1 plus I to the power of N. Let's plug in what we know. We know that the principal amount is how much he took out in the beginning, so which was $499, right? We're going to do 1 plus I, which is 0.017, all to the power of 2.6301, right? So we have A is equal to, I always like to go in and do whatever's in the bracket. So it's just 1 plus 0.071. So that turns into 1.017. Sorry, 2601. Right, so let's go into our calculator and put 1.017 to the power of 2.6301, which is going to give us 1.0453333427, right? And then I just like to go in and multiply that by 499, which is going to give me roughly $521.62. So that's how much he owes at the end, right? Therefore, Eli owes $521.62 after 81 days. if we want to know how much you paid in just interest, we know interest is equal to the total amount he pays minus the principal, which is going to be $521, which is the total amount he pays, minus the total amount he took out, which was $499. So he ends up paying roughly $22.62 in interest. And that's how you solve these kind of problems. So like I said, there's another tool that you can use that can help you determine your monthly payments and how long it'll take you to make those. Unfortunately, I can't click on the hyperlink, so I'm going to open it up on my Google Classroom or on my Google, and then we'll go through that. But this tool can basically help you determine how long it will take you to pay off your credit card. And it'll actually give you various options. So it'll give you like the option to pay it off in like a month. It'll give you the option to make just your minimum payments and how long it'll take you to do that. It actually shows you and compares 3 options together. So we'll go through it together and I'll show you what it works like. And we're actually going to use that tool to determine how long it would take us to pay off a loan of $6,000, and we're going to see if we only made the minimum payments, and then what would happen if we made the minimum payments plus an additional $50 a month. So like I said, you can just go to this website on your sheet. It should be a hyperlink, so if you click on it, it'll take you to this place. You could also just go into Google, and I think I just typed in loan calculator Government of Canada. It's actually run by the Government of Canada. So we're going to use this. So it says it's from the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. It's always best to pay off your credit card balance in full by the due date of your statement. If you can't, which sometimes you can't, you can still reduce the amount of interest you have to pay. The credit card payment loan calculator compares 3 different payment options to pay off your credit card balance. Option A is what if you only make the minimum payments, which is we're going to look at. What if you make the minimum payments plus an additional amount, which we'll also look at. And then what if you just make a fixed payment every month, right? So the calculator assumes that you're not using your credit card while you're paying off the balance. So like it assumes that you spent all the money you wanted to on that credit card and you're not actively using it, right? So let's click calculate to see the results. So we want to do, it says $6,000, and if you make your payment, and the APR and the annual interest rate here is $19.99. So let's change that, $19.99, right? Let's change this to 6,000, right? And then so the option A is if we just make our minimum monthly payments. So again, like I said, minimum monthly payments are either just $10 or the minimum monthly percent. So whichever one's higher, right? So based on the information, your first minimum payment would be about $30. So the other option is if we make our minimum payment plus some money. So I think it said if you make your minimum payment an additional $50, so let's put on 50. So in total, you'd be paying $70 a month. And then let's say we wanted to do, if you did just $200 a month, you said, you know what, I want to pay $200 a month until I can pay off that $6,000. So we have a few options here. So we have option A, we have option B, which is going to be 50 plus the minimum payment, right? And then we have our, if we just pay $200 always. So let's calculate that. So now if you go down, oops, let me calculate. I messed something up. I messed this up. So I'm just going to go back and fix where I made a mistake. 899. It's really hard to do this on. Okay. That's still wrong. Let's try that again. Okay, hopefully it works that time. If not, we'll just put in 20%. It's not a big deal. Okay, it did work. Okay, awesome. So as of September 2010, regulations require banks and other federal banks to regulate financial and other financial institutions to show an estimate on your credit card statement for how long it would take you to actually pay all your balance if you only made the minimum payment. So this actually shows up on your bill. in keeping with those regulations, those estimates may be made by rounding your balance up to the next $100. So say you had $520 that you need to pay up, they round up to $600. And because of the FCAC's minimum payment calculator uses your credit card's actual balance, the results might be a little bit different. So let's look at this. You can actually print this out for yourself, and it shows you a month by month payment breakdown, and it assumes that you're not using your credit card while you're trying to pay off the balance. So it does a really good job. It tells you, so if you were just to make just the minimum payments, it would take you about 22 years and 1 month to pay off your credit card. Right? 22 years and 1 month. You would have started with your original balance of $6,000, right? You would pay $7,223.51 in your interest. And so eventually you will have paid about $13,232.51, right? You won't have saved any time. That's kind of the bare minimum that you can do. So let's go in and write that information in here. So it would take us roughly 22 years and 1 month, right? And then you can also write down, it would take how much you would pay. You would pay like 13 something. I think it was 13,232. Right? And you'd end up paying about $7,000 in interest. What if you made your minimum payment an additional $50? So let's say here we made our minimum payment plus the $50. That was option B for us. It would take you about 5 years and 11 months. So we can go write that down. Let's go write that down. So it'd take us about 5 years and 11 months, which is almost 6 years to pay it off, which is still quite a bit of time, right? And you would end up paying $3,000 in interest for a grand total of $9,047.84, right? If you did it this way, you would eventually overall save about $4,184.66, as well as 16 years and 2 months. If you decided, you know what, I'm just going to pay $200 every month, let's make a fixed amount, it would take you roughly about 3 years and 6 months to pay it off. You'd end up paying $2,385 in interest, right, for a grand total of $8,385.11, right, and you would save roughly, compared to your original option A, you would save about $4,800 and 18 years of your life, right? So this is just a summary of your results. It always tells you how much you would save. My favorite is this, right? I like seeing it just like right there in front of me, because it actually tells you like how much you'll save. So for option A, right, look at how much interest you're paying. The red is how much interest you're paying. You're paying way more interest than you originally even took out, right? With option B, you're paying a little bit more interest than you had originally taken out. And with option C, you're paying a little bit less. But it's really, really important to realize that with credit cards, because they're compounded monthly and because they have such a high rate of interest, it's really easy to get into credit card debt, right? And that's not to scare you off of using credit cards. They're a great way to build credit, but you just have to be mindful of when you're using them, that you're paying them off. And when you're using it, try not to use a credit card on stuff that you know you won't be good for after. So a general rule of thumb with credit cards is use what you have, not what you think you'll have, right? Because it's just so easy to get into further and further debt. And one of the biggest causes of people declaring bankruptcy is actually credit card debt, just because it's so easy to end up in a massive amount of debt. Like this person spent $6,000, right? And like within a matter of years ended up having so much debt, right? So it's just really, you just need to be careful. And this is $6,000 assuming that they never use that credit card ever again, right? Which, if you think about it, in 22 years and 1 month, the unlikelihood of you using a credit card, pretty slim to none. So that's just really like my cautionary tale. I really like this credit card payment calendar because it just tells you like other saving strategies. So for option C, instead of paying $200 every month, if you pay $100 every 2 weeks, you'll save an additional $271 for a total saving of $5,119 and 18 years and 11 months compared to just making the minimum payment. Right, the other option is switch to a low rate credit card. Let's say you had a credit card with an interest rate of 12% and an annual fee of $30. Even if you were only making the minimum payment, you would have saved $3,865 in interest to pay off your balance in 6 years and 9 months sooner than if you had a credit card rate with the one that we have. Check your financial institutions and see if you qualify for any other low interest products. So sometimes, and more often than not, low interest credit cards will cost a little bit of a monthly payment, but they actually end up paying off in the long run. Yeah, so it's like really good. They give you a really good principal report and everything. So this is a cool tool if you ever want to use it. And that is it for our lesson.